Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Mali. And thank you, MMA. Thank you, everybody, for showing up here and for those of you who are online. Uh, Delighted to be uh, the first of the leadership series that I'm planning. 10 years ago, I left the corporate world to do this work. And I'm so happy to be doing this first with Shyam. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just take 2 minutes to introduce the concept of what we are trying to work on. I want this to be more real life and more practical rather than theoretical and conceptual. So we're going to be talking about some real life issues because I understand that when we can work with issues and look at real life ways to address them, that's when we will learn our own way by applying that concept in our respective contexts. Okay, there's no one solution for all. There is one framework which you can use as a solution for your own context. 20 years ago, when I was still in the bank, I had this aspiration, somewhat similar to Shyam, but that I needed to care for the people who worked for me. I found that people were burning out, people were getting exhausted. This is after the global financial crisis. So I did the thing which I knew, and like what Meera was mentioning, I started teaching yoga at work. Then that kind of morphed into teaching the people how to deal with stress. But over this period of 10 years, I realized that the root cause is what needs to be addressed. So no amount of going to the spa addresses the root cause. Similarly, no amount of yoga or Zumba or meditation or breath work will address the underlying stress that people face when they are at work. And to me, what I understood at that time was people are stressed because they are not able to be themselves at work. They're not able to connect the meaning of their work with their life, with who they are. So that's when I undertook to leave that world. And I thought that by working with people, primarily leaders, we could make a different world happen, both at the workplace. People would be a lot more energetic, impactful, engaged. Organizations would be a lot more impactful on the world. That's the intention with which I left. And somewhere along the way, at the same time that I left, Shyam was at Federal Bank. He took over a different route. And he had a real life experience of implementing all that I sought at his workplace. So today, thanks to Mali, we're going to bring this whole thing together. And I have many other people with who I walk. That's why I call myself a Sherpa. I'm not a coach. I'm not a mentor. I am a Sherpa because I lay the path and I walk with the people, beside the people, not in front of them. So that's my kind of way of doing this. I'm delighted to be here with Shyam today.
Do I say something? Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Mali. You were very kind with your words. I hope half of it is true. Thanks, Subha. This session, when it was conceived, the idea was to try and... Many of us started out at the same time, had similar corporate ambition, aspiration. Each of us have landed at different places over the years. When Subha and I spoke, when I was yet in the bank, about 2 years back, he forwarded a video of the lady who was running Patagonia. I don't know if you're all familiar with Patagonia. And in which the underlying theme was leadership and how can it sustain or coexist along with doing good. And I thought it was quite appropriate, and both of us signed up to the view that you don't have to be only demanding. I don't say you don't have to be demanding. Only demanding, only nasty to accomplish corporate objectives. So we had then said, maybe in a lighter moment, that someday we should do something together and communicate this. And that thought just rested there. And about 2 months back when we reconnected, we reminded ourselves maybe there's an opportunity to talk about it. And that's how we are here, today. We hope to have a good dialogue and, in the bargain, all of us come out with new thoughts, ideas, which we can go back and implement. My own thought around engaging with people and leadership and is my, I don't want to sound pompous, but my belief is that if in a corporate environment, which tends to be both challenging, stressful, and demanding, if the leadership, I'm not talking for leader, I'm talking about the leadership or the system can enable people to feel good about themselves, invariably outcomes are favorable. Because environment is, we are not served a different environment than some other people in some other corporate, right? Life is like, it's not like uniquely choosing us to have a difficult time versus somebody else. The environment is the same. India is growing 6.5%, 7%. Or global is, growth is receding, whatever. It's a unique, the situation is the same for everybody. Now, different corporates, different institutions approach it with their own perspective, and invariably it's the senior leadership, the governance chain which sets the tone. And from my personal experience, having worked in both different geographies and multinationals and India originated, originally ethnically biased companies, I've had the privilege of being in different environments. And my common theme and belief, and to my satisfaction it did work out, is if the effort of the leadership is to constantly focus around making teams and individuals feel better and important about themselves, I think the outcome is usually way better than the average outcome. And that speaks to the theory of helping people. We all live for self-worth, right? Self-esteem to me, or to all of us, is the most important thing. And we want to feel good about ourselves. And in that context, my own approach to leadership, and I want to believe it has helped achieve, some success is, if large cohorts of people come together and begin to believe that they can express themselves in the most authentic manner, the outcomes are way better than the average. And that means the institution is in a better place. So I think that's where I begin my conversation, and I leave it to Subha to sort of probe further, and we can have a deeper conversation around this. But that's just the baseline in which I approach my own journey, and we can speak from there.
Fabulous. And that speaks exactly to my experience in the last 10 years, both with Shyam's leaders, who I have worked very closely with, and the same holds good for whether it's Malaysia, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's the US, whether it's Europe. It's not a culturally different set of things. So what Shyam just now said applies across. And secondly, it applies across demographics also, or age. Okay, it's not that the older people feel differently about it, the younger people feel differently about it. So it's a very, very important nuance to understand that if you can let people express themselves, whether they are leaders or otherwise, everyone is a leader in that sense, based on who they are, you will get the best out of them. And that is the thing that Shyam, to speaking to your point, Mali, earlier, that's what he has consistently done in his organization. So I will give you all something very specific. The work that I do today is to help people understand what is extraordinary about themselves. If I go to a room and ask people, do you know? They know about the others, but they do not know what is it about themselves. Because they've not made a conscious effort to discover it, you all grow, quote unquote, in a humble environment. We think it's pride if I knew what is good about myself. So please go back and check in your most difficult moments, what skill of yours did you use to break through? How did you win in a difficult situation? And you will see that there is a pattern. Whether it's about raising your performance or breaking through a challenge, you would have consistently used the same set of skills or methods. Stick with it, discover it, and you will get the best of it. And if you are a leader, help people discover this. Now today, I wanted to bring some real life challenges that leaders face. We've seen in the world, recently particularly, and I think Mali alluded to this, in the quest for a very short runway, I have to deliver fantastic results and outcomes. Leaders are driven to driving for performance. That's a fact. Everyone has that challenge, okay? They go to a new setup or they take on a new role. First 90 days, 100 days, they're still figuring out what's going on. Before you know, it's like, I have to deliver some first year results. It's too late. Like I try and buy time for the second year, but I have to deliver in the second year. By third year, my term is over. And it's time for renewal, right? Which means 2.5 years, I have time for renewal. So there's tremendous time pressure on people. So I want to present a few, maybe in a way you see it as this versus that. So I had written this down, people versus performance. I'd written it down as growth versus governance. I called it breaking versus boundaries. You can call it innovation versus regulation, or breaking versus boundaries, or capital versus collateral. Capital is seeking immediate returns, but it doesn't care about the collateral effects or something like that. Patagonia cares a lot about the environment because it says, I'm an outdoor company. If there's no environment, there's nothing for me to sell because people will not go outdoors. So that is a little bit different way of thinking about collateral. So what I wanted to ask Shyam is a person who has delivered on all fronts. Highly engaged people, raving fans about his leadership, but also multiples, 5x, 6x, 7x, 8x in terms of profits or revenues or outcomes in terms of book size, share price, all of these things, right? So, Shyam, my question for you is, how do you see this dichotomy? Because this is the big challenge most of the leaders face.
Thanks. The way I think about this is, we live in an and world, not an or world. It's not this or that, it is this and that. So I think leaders, leadership, governance chain have to internalize the fact that we don't have the privilege of delivering outcomes at the cost of poor governance. It is delivering good results and good governance. We don't have the privilege of treating people as doormats and delivering outcomes. I think those are things of the past where windows are short and people get rewarded in short spans of time. Now I think the call out for wrong behavior is almost instant. So if we internalize the fact that we are living in an and world, the first thing that comes to mind is a sense of balance, right? And a sense of inclusivity. So if your leadership and your challenge, the senior team and the governance chain is acutely aware that we are living in an and world and our priority and our most important outcome is to make sure that the community of people we work with have to understand this and sign up to it. So this is a very long haul activity of getting followership, not by dictation, but by evangelization. Right? If of course there is a time element to it, because we live in worlds where every quarter you have to go on television and explain why the hell did you miss the quarterly number. And here is where I think stakeholder management is extremely important. If as a leader you are able to capture the stakeholders and help them understand that why we are doing what we are doing and what is its long-term outcome, well-meaning people sign up to it. Of course, there will be naysayers and there will be people who will challenge it, and good. It's always good to be challenged. But if you have conviction that the model that you're pursuing is quite deep and sustainable, then you have to back that thought. So balance getting the stakeholders, as in this instance, say in a large listed bank, it's the governance chain, the board, the senior leadership. They cannot, at the drop of a hat, keep changing and move the needle, as it were, only because somebody else did something else and you have underperformed. Of course, there will be instances I have had in my own time in the bank in my early years. After an initial honeymoon, many people called for my head and they said, this guy is the wrong guy for this job, take him out. Because for the approach we took, the stock saw some fall. Not some fall, material fall. Right? Because the market lives in very binary 0-1 situation. They like you or they don't like you. There is, they want this outcome and not some other outcome, and it's only natural. So the leadership having the courage and the backing of the board, if you will, to say, yes, we are willing to take those hard knocks and sustain it. And the best answer to that is time and outcome, right? I mean, today, by the grace of God, over a 14-year period, I came out with reasonably okay numbers, so I can say it and there is some credibility to it. At midpoint, somebody would say, waste of time. And, I mean, it's only natural, right? I mean, the people will call you out. So, one is time, second is balance, but above all, extreme conviction and being authentic about it. You may fail. I mean, I'm not suggesting that everything we do is always going to go right. But if the intention, as you know, we all know, if you deeply desire something, the world conspires to get it. Alchemist said that, and so it's something that I have personally benefited and believed in. So I think the questions that Subha asked, is it performance or something else? I want to point to the fact that it is an and world, and that is something that we cannot unsubscribe from. We have to believe that. How do we accomplish that, and how do we ensure that the material stakeholders stay invested in that thought and don't see this as a personal agenda but as a larger institutional agenda? Invariably you get the support. So the answer, Subha, therefore is balance, authenticity, consistency and conviction that this is good for the long haul, and carry the stakeholders to sign up to that deal. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. I get the word balance. I get the word and. So it's something that the leader has to figure out. And then you have to once you're authentic, then I think with these two, you will be able to get the stakeholders on board. So I'm trying to make it even more simpler. I'm trying to say, if you're authentic, you are confident, and you have to have the clarity and the conviction to be able to take it to the world and various stakeholders, right? And your consistent message, right?
And you'll have to take a lot of scars on the back, because there are people who are going to throw stones and tell you that. And, you know, I'm not, because my wife is here, but Mali did allude to her. And I have to say, yes, thank you. Because every time the only person who can go back and cry as a leader is to the family. And my only family is the dear lady here. So she said, okay, go, do it. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's, in today's world, there are opportunities for many shortcuts, which people try to innovate in the wrong areas to get outcomes. And then it comes back to hurt big time, not just you, but all your stakeholders, the investors, the employees, the clients, the customers, everyone gets impacted. And it's very difficult to bring it back, right, Shyam? There are many, many examples of that. But still people do it. So I'm just trying to get to the other side of it. Why do people do this? When people know this logically makes sense, what drives leaders to do the other side?
Gordon Gekko famously said, right, greed is good. So I think there is a, not, I mean, I don't want to be generous or otherwise, but it's, when you look at leadership through the lens of results and the measure of, you know, that theory, I think is what it's called, Gerhardt's theory or whatever, which basically says when the measure becomes the means, then the measure loses its value. Right? You start measuring results as the only way of declaring victory, then people start gaming it. So in this context of having to deliver constantly, if you are not able to preserve the integrity of what we've been given the keys to, it's a very hard call, and nobody is going to be able to give you the concession for underperformance. So there is a pressure of performance, but to deliver that in the most authentic, sincere, credible manner is what we are signed up to. I think the essence of that is the drum roll of the company, whichever you are, has to be at another level.
Yes.
And leadership is about making people come up to that drum beat. I would think the successes or the failures that we've seen in the recent past, particularly in the banking industry, we've seen some banks which, on the face of it, were looking like they were doing everything right, suddenly have been called out for wrong practices, is because they probably gave some of the more underlying core facets a miss or a pass. Because in doing so, they were getting rewarded. Right? And that counterbalance, or that the ability for the system to challenge that, maybe was being subdued or muffled in that system. Now, when we celebrate leaders, I think one of the questions we all have to ask is this a timeless outcome, or is it good for this time and may not? And we've seen, without taking any names, the 4-5 banks that were celebrated as really rock stars turned out to be less than that in a reasonably short span of time. And underlying the core message is shortcuts or inappropriate practices were being allowed to persist. Now, who calls that out? That's where the role of the regulator and the governance system is, right? And innovation usually happens at the fringe of regulation. Everybody chooses to play that at the edge. You can make those little innovations. And unfortunately, multiplier effect of many such compromises turns out to be a problem. It's not like I made one and I got a positive result. It's the typical thing. When nobody's looking, I made that one mistake, I won. And then I think nobody's looking and I make that mistake many times over. I think the greatest learning for me, or I would encourage everybody, is particularly in corporations and even smaller teams, is the I don't want to sound like a moral science class, but we have to be supremely watchful of the fact that what you do when nobody is looking is more important than what you do when somebody is looking. Very hard to, I know as a leader, or many of you as practitioners will realize, but what we do when nobody is seeing us is even more important than what we do when everybody is watching. Very hard. But I think in the long arc of time, you take companies, you will see that they have outlived, the companies that have outlived long stretches of time are where the leaders and the leadership, I'm not talking about individuals, institutional leadership, has actually done 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 the right things when nobody saw them. And then the outcomes have been more sustainable. Even the famous Jack Welch, after 25 years of extraordinary, the end was not so sexy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm no one to comment on how good, bad he was, but it's the long arc of time which calls out good, bad, ugly. So nobody needs to be passing judgments, but I think we have to figure it out that the core of what we construct, and I heard Mali say that, maybe Subha will refer to it, but one of the things I have so dearly believed in, and I still believe in it, and I encourage everybody to think about it. One is do things that when nobody's doing it, when nobody's looking at do it. But whatever we do, the one line I want to apply to myself, and I keep, for those who care, preach it. Can you tell mom? Whatever we do, if we can tell mom, you pick mom, replace with wife, parent, mother, father, uncle, brother, whoever is dear to you, and proudly say that, then you don't need a copy, you don't need a rule book. Because all of us will do only things that the family is proud of. Or our best, most well-wisher is proud of, right? We won't do things that we want next day morning says, look at yesterday's RCB event, right? It's a tragedy. After a great victory, poor governance led to the problem that Bangalore saw yesterday. All the fizz out of a great victory is gone when 11 people lose life. If only they had planned better. Anyway, that's a separate story. But I would say, to answer Subhas, that question is this. We fall prey to greed is good. I'm not suggesting we should not pursue greed numbers. Of course we should. Outcome is everything. But I think the how and the means in the long run is as important as the result.
Absolutely. So this so neatly fits into what we all call well-being and legacy. And I'll talk to you just a little bit of what Shyam has spoken about. If you are consistently doing things that you cannot go to sleep with when you're alone, you will fall sick. You will get chronically sick. And that is why I say doing yoga is not enough. If you're doing things which are in this manner where when no one is looking, you're doing things which are not right, you will fall sick. You will carry chronic ailments and a lot of stress inside you. That's number one. It is a basic principle of well-being. So I'm just trying to bring it back because I always, for leaders, I bring it back to the person. And I ask a second question, which is a slightly a next generation version of what Shyam said. Can you tell mom? And I said, if your son or daughter sees you doing this, this is the only lasting legacy you leave. Because all the money you leave may not remain. All the homes you leave may not remain. But what you live in their subconscious mind will remain not just for them, but for their kids and their kids. So, would you do things and celebrate things which you want to pass on? So it's the most lasting legacy, what Shyam has just said. And that's what you leave behind, not just at home, but also at work. The next generation leaders, right? And through them in their homes. So it is such a huge responsibility as a leader to do the right thing, to do right by yourself, to do right by your mom, but also do right by everything else that you value. So thank you for that, Shyam. I think it's very, very important what you brought. So going back to the first thing, it is not just enough to be authentic to who you are, but also do things in a manner which is right. But coming to my third question, which is back to you, when you first joined Federal Bank, and then over the period of time, we've seen that if you have to speak to something consistently when share price is going down, you have to kind of get the stakeholders consistently on your side, even the staff or your employees are looking at what's happening to the bank. You have to have a personal conviction and drive and something meaningful which inspires you to get out of bed and get to work every day. What was that?
Some of my colleagues are there. Maybe they will tell you whether they believe.
I know this thing about most admired bank, but that came, I think, along the way, right? So how did it begin?
No, I think one general belief is if the senior team, the leader, the leadership is both passionate and consistently displaying that passion and behaving that passion, then I think there's a wider belief that forms. The line that I've always said, and some of you who may or may not remember, or the movie called Flashdance, which is a movie in the 1980s. And the line which stuck with me and has been my guiding principle is, take your passion and make it happen. Right? And if we believe that leadership is passionate about something and is not inconsistent in their behavior with their stated passions, many start signing up to that. And in large organizations, it's consistency. The whisper channel in a large organization is bigger than any formal channel. Right? As they say, good news takes the staircase, bad news takes the escalator, wrong news takes a rocket launcher. Right? So, wrong news proliferation has a greater chance in... so if I've said something, but my office or my colleague who works right out of my office, my door, sees exactly opposite behavior, in 15 minutes the 15,000 or 20,000 employees will just laugh you out. Whether they do it on your face or otherwise, they'll. So I think the challenge for all of us in a large, particularly large setup, is the belief. My own model is belief leads to behavior, leads to process, leads to outcomes, and it's a self-correcting model. Right? If you have institutional conviction, belief, and the team sees that in practice consistently. One of the things I tried in the bank in my more recent job was I did put myself under a little bit of a gun, but I thought it is a nice way to do it. For 365 Sundays, I didn't miss one Sunday in writing something to the team. Right? Every member of the employee workforce got a message, some 8, 10, 15, 20 lines, which was therefore it cut the hierarchy. Employee number 1 and employee number 25,000 got the same message at the same time on the same day every week. So they get to hear whatever. It could be something that I observed in the branch or in the bank or something in the world, or Virat Kohli scored a century or something happened, and we just talk about it. And there's a greater chance that people see that there is no dilution of content. It's just consistently the same thing that every employee gets to read, see, hear, and believes in, starts believing in. Then there is a common institutional signature. I could say something, I go to the branch on the Monday morning, chances are they've read it on a Sunday, they speak the same language. Then the drumbeat of the company starts beginning to be that. So, answer your question is belief and behavior is not inconsistent, and it's for long periods of time.
Yeah, this one I think Maya will speak to this. Abhyasa as defined in Yoga Sutra. That's what he's talking about. So it's called over an extended period of time, without interruption, and it has to be sincere. And people will see through that. That's what you said, right? So if you say something but do something else in the room. So you need to be consistent in this manner, and that's what is defined as Abhyasa in yoga, and that's lived in real life, right, as leadership.
I don't know this Sanskrit or not, but that's what I
Maya knows it.
She taught me.
She did not tell you the word, but yeah, she held you to that. No, I'm asking this question also because you started with 8,000 employees. When you left, there were 16,000. When you started, I remember you telling me that there was not even an air conditioner and full of files.